It happens more often than people realize. You're standing in the shower, or staring out the window during a long commute, or lying in bed while everything around you is completely silent. And suddenly, your mind isn't here anymore. You're somewhere else. You're replaying the conversation that never actually happened. You're finally saying the perfect comeback to an argument from years ago. You're imagining a moment where people finally recognize your worth. Or you're preparing for something that hasn't even happened yet. And strangely, the scene in your mind can feel incredibly real. The emotions feel real. The tension feels real. Sometimes, even the relief feels real. Then, suddenly, you snap back to reality. And for a moment, there's this strange feeling. Part comfort, part disappointment. Comfort because the moment passed, but disappointment because the version in your head somehow felt better than real life. And if this happens to you often, you might have wondered something before. Why does my mind keep doing this? And more importantly, is something actually wrong with me?
The first thing to understand is this. If your mind does this, you're not strange, and you're definitely not alone. In fact, the human brain is designed to do something very similar. It constantly runs simulations, almost like a built-in rehearsal system. Your mind quietly explores possibilities, what might happen next, how you might respond, what someone else might say. This ability is part of what makes humans so adaptable. Long before something actually happens, the brain is already practicing different outcomes. It helps us prepare for challenges, reflect on the past, and imagine possible futures. But for some people, this system becomes far more vivid. Their thoughts don't just wander for a moment. They build entire scenes, detailed conversations, different outcomes, alternate versions of reality. And when this happens often enough, it can start to feel like part of your life is happening somewhere else, inside your own mind.
Here's something fascinating about the human brain. It is constantly trying to predict the future. Not in a mystical way, in a practical, survival way. Your brain is always asking quiet questions in the background. What might happen next? How should I respond? What mistakes should I avoid repeating? To do this, the brain runs small mental simulations. It replays memories. It imagines possibilities. It tests different outcomes. And interestingly, this system becomes most active when your mind is not busy with something demanding. That's why your thoughts suddenly become louder when you're doing simple things like walking, showering, driving, or lying in bed staring at the ceiling. Your body is on autopilot, so your mind starts exploring. For some people, those explorations don't stay small. They turn into full scenarios, conversations, situations, entire moments that feel almost real. Your mind becomes a storyteller, not because you're trying to escape reality, but because your brain is trying to understand it.
One of the most common ways this shows up is through conversations. Someone says something to you. Maybe it's a comment that bothered you. Maybe it's a moment where you stayed silent. And hours later, your mind goes back to it. You replay the scene. You imagine what you should have said, what you wish you had said. Sometimes you even imagine the entire conversation playing out differently. This happens for a reason. When something emotional happens, the brain doesn't like leaving it unfinished. It looks for closure. And if that closure didn't happen in real life, your mind tries to create it internally. So the conversation keeps going, not out loud, but inside your imagination. Your brain isn't doing this to annoy you. It's just trying to finish a story that felt incomplete. Another type of scenario the mind often creates is about success. You imagine a moment where everything finally works out. Maybe people finally recognize your effort. Someone finally understands you. Someone finally says the words you've been waiting to hear. In these imagined moments, you're respected, appreciated, seen for who you really are. These scenes often appear when someone has felt overlooked or underestimated in real life. The mind quietly creates a version of reality where your effort finally receives the recognition it deserves. And interestingly, this ability isn't always a bad thing. In fact, many high performers use it intentionally. Athletes often visualize success before a competition. Speakers imagine themselves delivering a confident presentation. The brain rehearses success so that when the real moment arrives, it feels more familiar. But there's an important difference. When imagination supports action, it can be powerful. But when imagination replaces action, that's when it can start holding someone back.
There is another powerful reason the mind creates these imagined scenarios. Control. Real life is unpredictable. You can't control how people react to you. You can't control every outcome. And you definitely can't go back and rewrite the past. But inside your imagination, everything slows down. You choose the words. You choose the response. You decide how the story ends. In your mind, the moment finally unfolds the way it was supposed to. For people who have experienced uncertainty, rejection, or being misunderstood, this kind of inner control can feel strangely comforting. The mind quietly creates a space where things finally make sense. A place where your voice is heard, where the moment resolves the way you wish it had. And that desire, to feel understood, to feel in control, to feel complete, is deeply human.
But there is an important balance. Imagination can be a powerful tool. It helps us reflect, prepare, and understand ourselves. But like any tool, it can become unhelpful when it starts replacing real experience. When someone spends too much time inside imagined scenarios, something subtle begins to happen. You start feeling emotions about moments that never actually occurred. You might replay a situation in your mind and feel the frustration all over again. You might imagine a perfect outcome and then feel disappointed when real life doesn't match it. And sometimes the mind begins to prefer imagination over action, not because the person is lazy, but because imagining something feels safer than risking failure in reality. Slowly, the brain becomes more comfortable inside imagination than inside uncertainty, not because reality is bad, but because imagination is predictable.
The goal isn't to completely stop imagining scenarios. That would be unrealistic. This ability is part of how the mind thinks and processes the world. The real goal is learning how to use it in a healthier way. One simple approach is writing your thoughts down. When a scenario keeps repeating in your mind, putting it into words can sometimes release that mental loop. Instead of replaying the moment over and over, the brain finally feels like the thought has been processed. Another helpful step is asking yourself a small but powerful question. Is this thought preparing me for something real, or is it helping me avoid something uncomfortable? That single question can reveal a lot about what your mind is trying to do. Sometimes the scenario is helping you reflect and prepare, but other times it might be a signal that something in real life needs your attention. And in those moments, the most helpful step isn't more imagination. It's stepping back into reality.
One of the most valuable skills you can develop is simply noticing when your mind begins to drift. Because the mind will wander. It will replay moments, imagine possibilities, and build entire scenes inside your thoughts. That's part of how the human brain works. But when you catch yourself deep inside an imagined situation, something simple can help. Gently bring your attention back to your senses. Notice your breathing. Notice the sounds around you. Notice what is physically in front of you. These small moments reconnect your mind with the present, not to punish yourself for drifting, but to remind your brain where you actually are, because your thoughts can travel anywhere, but your life is happening right here.
Your imagination isn't your enemy. In many ways, it's one of the most powerful abilities the human mind has. It allows you to reflect on the past, prepare for the future, and make sense of your emotions. But imagination was never meant to replace real life. It was meant to support it. You can think of it like a rehearsal room, a place where ideas are practiced, where conversations are replayed, where possibilities are explored. But eventually, the rehearsal ends, and the real performance begins. Because your life is not the version that plays perfectly inside your mind. It's the messy, unpredictable version unfolding outside of it. And even though it's less controlled, it's also where the real experiences happen. If this video helped you understand your mind a little better, consider subscribing for more explorations like this. This channel is all about psychology, human behavior, and the hidden patterns behind the way we think and feel. And if you've ever caught yourself imagining these kinds of scenarios, let me know in the comments. You might be surprised how many people experience the exact same thing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.